Welcome to the Kansas City Sports History Podcast. My name is Matt Starr, and I'm your host today. Our guest is Bob Motley, who was an umpire in the Negro Leagues from 1947 to 1958. Well, tell us about where you grew up, where you went to school, and what sports you participated in.
I grew up in Anderson, Alabama, and I lived there up until I went in the Marine Corps in 1943. And after I got out of the Marine, I came to Kansas City in 1946. I've been in Kansas City ever since then.
Okay. Did you play sports as a kid?
I played sport. I tried to be a pitcher, but I wound up being a baseball umpire.
Okay. Did you have any sports heroes as a kid?
I had a cousin. His name Mary Motley. He played for the Cleveland Browns years ago. He's deceased right now.
Uh-huh.
He played fullback for the Cleveland Browns.
Okay, all right. You grew up in Alabama, I understand, and I understand you worked at a local hotel and had acquaintances with a baseball player in the minor leagues. Tell us about that experience and how it influenced you into baseball.
Well, I worked at the Jefferson Davis Hotel, and the baseball players, they stayed at the hotel when they came to Anderson. Anderson had a team, Gaster, Jacksonville, and like I say, they stayed at the hotel where I was bellhopping. And that's the reason I was kind of concerned about the baseball players.
Well, how did you decide to get into umpiring?
I volunteered to go in the Marine Corps in 1943, and I helped invade Saipan, Tina, and Guam in Okinawa. I got shot up in Okinawa, and I was laying up in the bed, and they were playing a baseball game not too far from the hospital. So I went down there and see if I could umpire the baseball game. That's when I started trying to be an umpire. They need an umpire. I only had one leg at that time because I got shot in my left foot. So that's when I started umpiring.
Well, tell us about, was there any difference in the baseball rules in the Negro Leagues as compared to today's Major League Baseball?
No, the Negro League, they played by the American League baseball rules. We only had one rule book, and still the same. It's been like that for 100 years. Baseball haven't changed.
Well, I understand you were the first African-American umpire to attend the Al Somers Umpire School in Daytona Beach, Florida. Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, I tried for 10 years to go to umpire school. And the umpire school, they had two umpire schools, and both of them was in the state of Florida. And Florida had a state law why white couldn't teach black back in those days. But they finally left the law, and I was one of the first black to apply to attend the umpire school in Daytona Beach, Florida.
Well, I understand you're the only living Negro Leagues baseball umpire. What should future generations of baseball players remember from the Negro Leagues?
Well, I'm the last living umpire to umpire in the Negro League. I seen them all. I saw Satchel Paige pitch, Woody May, Hank Aaron, Don Newcomer, Joe Black, Buck O'Neill. I umpired, and I traveled in that league for years.
What were your favorite cities to umpire in, and least favorite?
I didn't have no favorite city. All I wanted to do was umpire. They play through the week. They played in a little small town like Sedata and Jefferson City, but on the weekend they played in the major city like Kansas City, St. Louis, Philadelphia, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York on the weekend. But in between city, they played in a little small town. And when I traveled in that league.
Okay, so you traveled quite a bit then, huh?
Well, that's the only way I had to do. I travel with the team. I get on one bus, and the Monarchs bus. I travel until they split up, and then I get on the Memphis Red Sox bus, Indianapolis Clown. That's the only way I could travel. I had to travel on the bus with the team. I always took the back seat on the bus so I can watch those guys.
Okay, interesting. Well, I understand you were the chief umpire at the College World Series in Omaha, Nebraska, and for several Big 8 tournaments. Tell us about some of those games.
Well, I'm umpired in the Big 8. In the Big 8 league, When Missouri played K-State, Nebraska, I umpired in that league. Then the College World Series in Omaha, I umpired in the College World Series in Omaha on several occasions.
Well, tell us about the challenges as you being an umpire in the Negro Leagues. I mean, the players, and coaches, and the fans may not always agree with the umpire. How did you get over those challenges?
Well, I went by the rule book. If you mess up, I throw you out of the ball game. I mean, I went by the rule. Uh-huh. Baseball is played by the rule book, and you have to play by the rule. If you don't play by the rule, you'd be ejected from the game. So either you play by the rule, or else I have to put you out of the ball game.
Okay. I understand you called a strikeout of Hank Blayless of the Kansas City Monarchs. He was so upset, he cursed you, bumped you, and refused to retire to the lockers. Tell us about games like that and what you did for your personal safety.
Well, Hank Blayless was one of the odd guys. He was a third baseman for the Kansas City Monarchs, and it was a close play at home, and I yanked Hank Bailey out at home plate, and he was all upset, and I threw him out of the ball game. And not on that, I had to ride on the bus with the same team that same day from city to city. And I took the back seat so I could watch those guys. And Hank Bailey's one of the guys. After we got on the bus, he called me every name in the book. Some not in the book, he called me. Then he got up and he gonna fight me. So like I said, I took the back seat. So he was on the front seat. So he got up and called me and said, "I'm gonna cut your so-and-so head off." And he put out a big old butcher knife and he came towards me. And he swung at me, he missed. And Buck O'Neill, he grabbed Hank Bailey and set him down. Told him, "You fool, if you touch that umpire again, I'm going to put you off the bus." He said, "You know you can go to jail, but if you cut that umpire." So that was the end of that. Buck O'Neill saved my life that time.
Mm-hmm. What Negro League game was most memorable for you?
Called the East and West game, played in Chicago every year, just like the All-Star game they have today. They had what's called the East and West game every year, was played in Chicago, and I was the chief umpire to umpire that the East and West game in Chicago. It went on for about 20 years.
Very interesting, yeah.
And they had a pack house for every game in Chicago.
Okay, all right.
They played at Commissioner Park in Chicago.
Well, tell us about umpiring in Negro Leagues. Some of the things happened in the crowd, game highlights, or is there any special moments during some of the games?
Yeah, in the Negro League, every ball player, they played to win, and they wasn't just fooling around. Earl Tabor was one of the great catchers for the Monarchs, and he used to catch in a rocking chair. Behind the umpire, in front of the umpire, he catch in a rocking chair. They had another guy by the name of Goose Tatum. He played first base for the Indianapolis Clown. And if you didn't watch him when the ball hit to the infield, if he didn't beat it careful, he put out another ball and he tried to trick you. So he played for the Indianapolis Clown.
Okay.
He wound up being a great basketball player too.
Okay.
For the Harlem Globetrotter.
Is that right? Wow. Well, tell us something funny that happened in the Negro Leagues. Maybe something a joke or a prank that somebody played on someone. Is there anything you could recall?
No, I don't know no joke, but the catcher used to catch in a rocking chair.
Uh-huh.
That was about the smoothest thing I ever seen a catcher do. He ran up a rocking chair and he rocked back and catch when Satchel Paige used to pitch in a rocking chair.
Well, this is your host, Matt Starr of the Kansas City Sports History Group. We're going to stop for a break. Stay tuned for more Kansas City sports history. This is your host, Matt Starr, and back now to more Kansas City Sports History podcast. Today, our guest is Bob Motley from the Negro Leagues. Well, tell us a little more about being the chief umpire at the East-West All-Star Game in Chicago and some of the All-Star players.
The East and West game, It's like the All-Star game that they have now. It's called East and West game, but it was an All-Star game in Chicago, and it was played every year at Comiskey Park. I got lucky to be the chief umpire at the East and West game. It was an honor to be the head chief umpire, call balls and strike at the East and West game. It played every year at Comiskey Park for years.
Well, I understand you have deep Kansas City sports history roots. You're a Royals Lancer, a Chiefs Redcoater, a Blades Blue Liner, Explorers Tennis Ace Club, and a Negro Leagues Baseball Museum board member. Tell us about your experiences and your favorite people to work with among some of those groups.
About 24 years ago, we started the Buck O'Neill and about four other guys, including myself. We want to start a museum. Most people want to take the museum out to the Royal and Chief Stadium, but we want it down on 18th Street. That's where most of the on the weekend you couldn't even get through 18th Street. It was just like New York City years ago. And that's where we want the museum to be at. And we had a mayor by name Emmanuel Cleveland. He got us the fund to build that museum down on 18th Street. And that's how it started 24 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What's your favorite part of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum?
Well, I donate my umpire equipment and uniform to the museum. It's in a cage there. Like I say, I'm one of the founders of that museum. Mm-hmm. So if you ever come down to the museum, look over at the baseball diamond, and you will see my umpire display there.
Okay.
I donate all my umpire uniform and equipment in that case.
Well, you are known for your style, maybe some of your splits or lunge or dramatic calls at the plate. Can you tell us more about your style of umpiring?
I didn't have no style, but on a close play, it just got into my bone. I love to see a real boom boom close play, and I might do the split to call somebody safe, or if it's close enough to call them out, I jump up in the air because I was so excited to see a close play like that.
Well, you made some game time decisions with Satchel Paige, Hank Aaron, Ernie Banks, and Willie Mays. Can you tell us about any of those?
Well, I'll tell you all about every one of them.
Okay.
So Satchel Paige, he never did. He didn't warm up on the sideline when he got ready to pitch. He threw about two warm-up pitches, and he's ready to go. That was Satchel Paige. Willie Mays, he just carried his bat up and he swung in and he hit the ball. They was some of the greatest baseball player I ever witnessed in my life. And Satchel Paige, he warmed up on the sideline, and he used to use a little piece of gum, chewing gum, wrapper, for the home plate. And that's how he used to warm up with a catcher.
He would aim for that piece of gum?
Yeah,
Great. What about Hank Aaron?
Hank Aaron, he didn't. He just carried his bat in his hand most all the time.
Mm-hmm. Ernie Banks?
Ernie Banks was one of the natural.
Mm-hmm.
He was a natural hitter. As you know, Ernie Banks went on to play for the Chicago Cubs, and also he was a first base coach for a while.
Yeah, Satchel Paige, one of the most best pitchers of all time, the Monarchs. Any more stories about Satchel?
Well, no more than Satchel Paige came to me one time when I was umpiring ball game. He said he was like to. I don't think he knew my name. He always addressed me as Ump. Ump, I like to call in all the outfielder. I want to strike out the side. I said, Satchel, the rule book state you must have 9 ball players on the field at all times. He said, okay, Ump. So I said they can come, but they have to stand on the infield to be a team. He said, okay. And he said, okay, Ump. He got back on the mound. He didn't have no outfielders out there. He struck out the side. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Struck out right on the plate. And the ball just, when the ball got to the plate, it looked like it took another a speed, boom, right in the catcher net.
Really? Wow. Yeah. What incredible.
And they used to have a catcher by the name Earl Tabor. He used to catch in a rocking chair. And at the same time, when he was striking out the side, he rocked with every pitch and rocked back.
Really?
His name Earl Tabor. He was a catcher at that time.
Any more stories about Buck O'Neill, a legend, played with the Kansas City Monarchs?
Well, no more than I had to throw Buck O'Neill out of a baseball game one night.
Did you?
Yep. And we just sleep. I didn't have no place to sleep that night. He said, "Well, you can go to and sleep in my bed with me." I said, "Okay." So I went there, and he said, "Just tell the people to give you the key." So I went to the room there and got the key. I got in the bed with one eye open, one closed, waiting for Buck to come in and make sure he had enough room on his side when he came in to get in the bed. But he thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. I waited for him to come in, and I had one eye open, one closed. But he never did say a word that night. He got in the bed, and we slept together that night. And I got up early that morning, got out of that before he could wake up. Yep.
Yeah. Any more stories about Ernie Banks, who started with the Monarchs?
No, Ernie Banks was a gentleman.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. No, he was just a great hitter.
Mm-hmm. Jackie Robinson started his career in the Monarchs too. Any stories about Jackie?
I didn't know Jackie that well. I was umpiring third base when he played for the Monarchs, and I didn't know him that well, but I knew he was there. But he wasn't. He was just another ball player at that time.
Okay.
When I was umpiring bases, and Jackie Robinson was playing second base and third base.
Any other players that stood out in your mind as far as from the Kansas City Monarchs?
Cool Papa Bell was one of the great guys of all time. Every ball player in there, they play, they didn't make a lot of money. They play for the love of the game. In fact, after season end every year, they used to play the All-Star team from the American League. And they were beating the American team every year until they were showing them up, and they stopped it. They played by a couple of years, but the Negro League ball players they was beating them. They couldn't win a ball game from it, so they stopped it from at the end of the season, because those ball players, they play for the love of the game. They didn't play for the money, because every one of them had a job during the off season, and I know a lot of work for Sheffield still, a lot of work for different companies, so they play for the love of the game. Mm-hmm. They didn't play for the money.
Well, you faced a lot of animosity expressed by players over your 25 years career as an umpire. What was your inspiration to keep umpiring despite the threats and the challenges?
Well, I want to be a major league umpire, and that was my desire, to be a major league umpire. And I tried for 10 years. I didn't realize at that time, in the 10-year period, the only way to go to the major league, you had to go to an umpire school. And they only had 2 umpire schools, and both of them was in the state of Florida. And Florida had a state law that white couldn't teach black for almost 12 years. Okay. Finally, they left that law. Okay. And I went to the umpire school. I was one of the first black to go to an umpire school because I wanted to become a major league umpire. And we had 80-some-odd students in the class at that time, and I came out top of the class.
Wow.
And but I couldn't get a job because they couldn't find a president would take a black umpire in the major league. Hmm. Finally, I got a call to go to the Pacific Coast League. Okay. From the umpire school, and I umpire in the Pacific Coast League. If you look right around the corner, you see on that thing, you see my umpire trophies.
Oh, yeah.
From Al Summer Umpire School.
Well, tell us about getting the Presidential Congressional Medal of Honor in 2012.
President Obama's secretary, whoever, called me and say, we'd like for you to come to Washington, D.C. to get the Congressional Medal. And so I said, sure, I'd like to come. And the president said that over the telephone to me. He said, wait a minute, I'll turn you back over to his secretary, whoever was at that time. But I did go to the White House to get the Congressional Gold Medal. If you look right there on the other side, it's there right now.
Great. What an honor. Yeah.
I was in World War II, and to get the Congressional Gold Medal. I was one of the first black Marine going to the Marine Corps.
Tell us a little more about your Marine Corps.
Well, I volunteered to go to the Marine Corps in 1946. I was living in Dayton, Ohio at that time. A bunch of guys said, and I was working for an inland manufacturer, reaming out those carbine guns. And so they volunteered to go in, and I said, I think I'll go in with you all. So I went in 1946.
Well, I understand you have a book called Ruling Over Monarchs, Giants, and Stars.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I want people to know about my background. So my son, he wrote the book, and every time he's with me, he had a recorder, so he asked me several things. And he didn't tell me at that time he was going to write a book, but my son wrote the book. He wrote 2 books.
Tell us about other Negro League umpires.
He got Frank Dunker's. When I try to be a Negro-based umpire, unless you have played in the Negro League, you couldn't umpire in the Negro League. And they had guys like Frank Dunker. He was a great catcher for the Monarchs years ago. They had brother Vaughn. He umpired in the Negro League because he played in the Negro League. And it took me 3 years to convince those guys to let me try to be an umpire, because I just got out of the Marine Corps, and I told them I umpire in the Marine Corps, and they said, well, have you ever played? I said, I tried to play when I was in Dayton, Ohio, and they wouldn't let me umpire for about a couple of years. So finally, they gave me a break to umpire, and the president, Dr. J.B. Martin, was at the game. He said, you did a heck of a job. We'd like for you to start traveling in the league. That's how I got a break to start umpiring in the Negro League.
Who was your favorite Negro League baseball players?
I didn't have no favorite. I can tell you who was great.
Okay.
I didn't have no. Hank Aaron, Whitey May, Satchel Paige, Don Newcomer, Joe Black. They all were great ball players. I didn't have no favorite. They was all great ball players.
Mm-hmm.
Hank Baders, Hank Thomason. They was all great ball players. I didn't have no great. They was all great ball players.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Every one of them ball players could have played in the major league at that time, and they would have been a superstar in the major league.
Great. Well, tell us something that most people do not know about you.
Well, I was born in Alabama. I ran away from home years ago because I was born in Talkerville, Alabama. My mama, my daddy died when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and they say how he died. He drank well water, and the well water was poisoned, so that's how he left. He died. But anyhow, I left Alabama because my mama said that, son, you better go to they know how to live with your uncle, because you're getting on up in age now, and if you get in trouble, you won't be around long. So I hobo from Anderson, Alabama, all the way to Dayton, Ohio, to live with my uncle, and that's how I went in the Marine Corps.
Okay.
Like I said, working at the inland manufacturer, the guys said they want to go into the Marine Corps, and we were reaming out those carbine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I went in the Marine Corps in 1943, came out in 1946. I helped invade Saipan, Tinian, Guam, and Oakland Harbor.
Yeah.
I got shot up in Oakland Harbor.
Appreciate your dedication, to do that. Wow. Bob, what's your favorite kind of pet?
I love animal. That's all.
Okay. Do you have a favorite barbecue restaurant in Kansas City?
Yeah, I like Gates Barbecue.
Okay.
I go to Brink once in a while, but I like Gates.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other Kansas City sports history comments before we wrap this session up?
No, I connect with the Kansas City Chief, and I also used to be with we had a basketball team here with the Kansas City King, and I helped sold season tickets for the Kansas City King, Kansas City Royals, and Kansas City Chief. I was one of the top ticket sellers for the Kansas City Chief and the Kansas City King at that time, and the Kansas City Royals. And the Royals have honored me, and the Chiefs have honored me. They take me to Super Bowl every year because of my past history of selling tickets. I love to talk to people and sell tickets, get you into the stands so you can see sport event.
Well, Bob, thanks for your time umpiring in the Negro Leagues and today with the Kansas City Sports History Group. Well, thanks for tuning in, folks. Today is, I hope you enjoyed the Kansas City Sports History Podcast. That's it. This is your host, Matt Starr, signing off. So stay tuned for more Kansas City Sports History interviews and podcasts to come.